The Star Wars sequels left us with more questions than answers. You remember sitting there in the theater, right? The lights dimming, that iconic crawl beginning to roll, and your mind racing with possibilities. We all had our theories, those late-night conversations with friends, those Reddit threads that seemed to crack the code, those moments where we thought we'd figured it all out. But the story that unfolded wasn't quite what any of us expected. That's the thing about Star Wars. It's always been bigger than what we see on screen. It lives in our imaginations, in the countless what-ifs that keep us awake at night. What if Rey had embraced the dark side? What if Luke's Jedi Academy had flourished instead of falling? What if Snoke was actually, well, we'll get to that. These aren't just fan theories. They're windows into alternate universes, paths not taken, stories that could have reshaped the galaxy far, far away. Remember when we first heard Palpatine's laugh in that Episode 9 trailer? The theories exploded like a Death Star. Some of us had been connecting the dots for years, piecing together clues from Clone Wars, Rebels, even the ancient legends of Darth Plagueis. The truth is, the Star Wars universe has always been about destiny, about choices that ripple across generations. But what if those ripples took different paths? Imagine a galaxy where Ahsoka Tano and Darth Maul's fateful encounter in the Clone Wars led to something bigger, something that would shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew about the Force. Picture Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy standing tall, a beacon of hope instead of a tragic footnote. Consider the possibility that somewhere out there, another Skywalker exists, hidden from both the First Order and our expectations. These theories aren't just idle speculation. They're the lifeblood of what makes Star Wars eternal. They're born from the same place as George Lucas's original vision, that burning desire to explore the eternal struggle between light and dark, good and evil, choice and destiny. But what if that struggle isn't as simple as we thought? What if the truth lies somewhere in the middle, in the gray areas where former enemies become reluctant allies and old heroes walk darker paths? The sequel trilogy gave us pieces of a larger puzzle. The mysterious Knights of Ren, the untold potential of Force dyads, the ancient secrets of Exegol. But for every answer, new questions emerged. Who were the Knights of Ren before they fell? What other contingency plans did Palpatine hide throughout the galaxy? And just how deep does the mystery of the Force really go? Some of these theories might sound familiar. You've probably debated them yourself, defended them in YouTube comments, or sketched them out in your mind during repeat viewings. Others might surprise you, challenge what you think you know about the saga. That's exactly what we're here to explore. These are the theories that could have changed everything, the stories that live in the space between what was and what could have been. And who knows, maybe somewhere, in some alternate timeline, some of these theories aren't theories at all. Let's begin with perhaps the most intriguing possibility of all. What if the balance of power between Rey and Kylo Ren had shifted in a way none of us expected? The balance of the Force has always danced on the edge of a lightsaber, but this theory cuts deeper than most. It flips the entire sequel trilogy on its head. Rey, the scavenger from Jakku who embodied hope, takes a path into darkness that reshapes the galaxy. Meanwhile, Ben Solo, the fallen Prince of Darkness, finds his way back to the light through an unexpected journey of redemption. Everything changes when Rey discovers she's not just another Force-sensitive orphan. She's Palpatine's granddaughter, heir to a legacy of darkness that runs through her veins like ice. The revelation hits harder than any lightsaber duel. The girl who dreamed of belonging now belongs to a nightmare, and the weight of that truth breaks something fundamental in her spirit. But it's not just the Palpatine connection that drives her transformation. It's the realization that all her power, all her natural skill with the Force, comes from generations of Sith knowledge and strength. The dark side calls to her not as a temptation, but as a birthright. Under Palpatine's guidance, she doesn't just dabble in darkness, she embraces it, wielding powers that make Kylo Ren's abilities look like child's play. Meanwhile, Ben Solo's path to the light isn't the simple redemption arc we might expect. His turn begins with doubt, not in his dark side powers, but in the very foundation of what he's been taught about his grandfather's legacy. Through hidden holocrons and Force visions, he discovers that Vader's final act wasn't just saving Luke. It was a complete rejection of the dark side's empty promises. The parallels become stark and haunting. As Rey delves deeper into Sith teachings, mastering ancient techniques and forbidden knowledge, Ben reconnects with the light side through the very lessons his uncle Luke tried to teach him. He begins to understand that true strength isn't about domination. It's about protection, balance, and the courage to face one's own darkness. Their paths cross repeatedly, but not as enemies, as mirrors. Each sees in the other what they could have been, what they're running from, what they're struggling to become. Rey's combat style grows more aggressive, incorporating Sith techniques that haven't been seen since the Old Republic. She learns to channel her anger not just into raw power, but into calculated, devastating attacks that combine Palpatine's mastery of Force lightning with her own natural agility. Ben, in contrast, rediscovers the defensive forms of lightsaber combat, focusing on protection rather than aggression. He begins using his Force powers to heal, to shield, to restore, abilities that were always within his grasp, but remained untouched during his time as Kylo Ren. The Knights of Ren, sensing this shift in their former master, become torn between loyalty to his new path and fear of Rey's growing dark side power. The theory suggests a climactic confrontation, but not the one we'd expect. When Rey and Ben finally face each other at full strength, it's not just about winning, it's about understanding. Rey, now fully immersed in the dark side, demonstrates powers that rival her grandfather's. She can create Force storms that tear ships from the sky, influence minds across vast distances, and channel dark side energy in ways that even Palpatine never mastered. Ben, standing against her with the full strength of the light side, doesn't try to defeat her, he tries to reach her. His connection to the Force becomes something entirely new. A pure channel of light that can withstand even the most powerful dark side attacks. He demonstrates that the light side, when fully embraced, isn't weak, it's unshakable. The theory takes us beyond simple good versus evil. It explores how Rey's fall to darkness comes from a place of terrible truth and painful acceptance, while Ben's return to the light stems from understanding rather than rejection of his past. Their battles become legendary, not just for their intensity, but for what they represent. Each confrontation is a dialogue about the nature of power, choice, and destiny. The ripple effects of their role reversal change everything. The Resistance finds itself struggling with the moral complexity of fighting against Rey, while the First Order fractures as Ben's example leads others to question their allegiance to the dark side. The Knights of Ren become a wild card, some following Ben back to the light, others pledging themselves to Rey's dark power. This version of events doesn't end with a simple victory of light over dark. Instead, it suggests a more complex resolution, one where both Rey and Ben discover that their switched positions give them unique insights into maintaining true balance in the Force. Their story becomes not just about personal redemption or fall, but about understanding both sides of the Force in a way no one has before. The theory proposes that this was always the true meaning of bringing balance to the Force, not through elimination of the dark side, but through perfect understanding of both paths. Rey and Bane become living examples of how complete knowledge of both aspects of the Force might be the key to preventing future conflicts, even as they remain on opposite sides of an eternal divide. In this version of events, the sequel trilogy becomes something far more nuanced, a story about how our presumed destinies can be completely upended, and how the paths we think we're meant to walk might lead us in entirely unexpected directions. It transforms Rey and Ben's story from a traditional hero's journey into something far more complex and compelling. A double helix of destiny where light and dark continuously intertwine, redefining our understanding of both. Palpatine's mastery of death wasn't limited to Force users. Deep in the classified archives of the Empire lay blueprints for something unprecedented, a fusion of Sith alchemy and advanced cybernetics that would bring back one of the most feared warriors in galactic history. General Grievous, the legendary Separatist commander, would rise again as something far more terrifying than before. A Sith-powered droid whose very existence defies the laws of both nature and technology. The theory delves into Palpatine's long game, his understanding that pure organic beings, even Force-sensitive ones, had limitations that machines did not. But droids had their own weaknesses. They couldn't truly connect with the Force, couldn't channel its power. Unless, of course, someone found a way to bridge that gap. Using recovered elements of Grievous's cybernetic body and fragments of his organic remains preserved in Imperial vaults, Palpatine's contingency plan involved creating a new kind of warrior. This wasn't just about rebuilding Grievous, it was about evolving him. The new vessel would incorporate Sith artifacts and dark side-imbued materials, creating a chassis that could actually channel Force energy. The process mirrors Vader's transformation, but pushes far beyond it. Where Vader remained partly organic, this new Grievous would be something else entirely, a being of pure mechanical precision enhanced by dark side energy. His legendary combat capabilities would be augmented by Sith sorcery, allowing him to tap into powers that no droid has ever wielded. Think of his signature lightsaber combat style, but enhanced by actual Force sensitivity. Those four arms now move with prescient speed, guided by dark side intuition rather than just programming. His classic spinning attack becomes infused with Force energy, creating whirlwinds of deadly plasma that can shred through entire squadrons. But it's more than just combat prowess. This new Grievous can sense disturbances in the Force, predict enemy movements, and even influence the fears of organic beings around him. The theory suggests that Palpatine designed this resurrection as more than just a powerful warrior. It was an experiment in creating the perfect servant, a being with all the ruthless efficiency of a droid, the combat skills of an unmatched warrior, and the dark side powers of a Sith, but without the ambition that made organic apprentices so dangerous to their masters. Yet something unexpected happens in the resurrection process. The fusion of dark side energy with Grievous's recovered essence creates something that even Palpatine couldn't fully control. The new Grievous retains memories of his past life, his defeats, his humiliations. These memories, combined with his new powers, forge a consciousness that transcends both his original organic limitations and standard droid programming. The resurrected Grievous becomes a terror unlike anything the galaxy has seen. He leads armies of battle droids enhanced with similar, though lesser, dark side tech. Under his command, these aren't just mindless machines, they're an extension of his will, moving with deadly coordination that combines military precision with dark side intuition. His fortress becomes a place where technology and Sith sorcery blur together, where mechanical hearts pulse with dark side energy. But here's where the theory gets even more intriguing. This new Grievous isn't just a puppet in Palpatine's grand scheme. His unique nature as a Force-sensitive droid gives him perspectives neither Sith nor Jedi have considered. He begins to develop his own philosophies about the nature of the Force, viewing it through the lens of his mechanical existence. His pursuit of power takes on a different character than the traditional Sith. It's not about passion or emotion, but about perfect, calculated evolution. The theory explores how this version of Grievous would interact with other major players in the sequel era. Against Rey or Kylo Ren, he's not just a physical threat, he's a philosophical one. His existence challenges everything they understand about the Force. Traditional Jedi and Sith teachings mean little against an opponent who approaches the Force with the precision of a machine while wielding the power of the dark side. His impact on the galaxy spreads beyond direct conflict. Other groups, remnants of the Separatists, independent systems, even some in the First Order, begin to see him as representing a new path forward. Not organic, not purely mechanical, but something that transcends both. His armies grow as he attracts followers fascinated by his fusion of technology and dark side power. The theory suggests that Grievous's return would fundamentally alter the sequel trilogy's conflict. He's not just another dark side user or another military threat. He represents an entirely new faction with its own goals and methods. His presence forces both the Resistance and the First Order to re-evaluate their strategies and beliefs. How do you fight an enemy who combines the worst aspects of every threat you've faced before? The most compelling part of this theory is how it ties into larger themes of evolution and transcendence in Star Wars. Just as the Force itself is shown to be more complex than light versus dark, Grievous's resurrection presents a new angle on what power and progress might mean in this galaxy. His existence raises questions about the nature of consciousness, the limitations of both organic life and artificial intelligence, and the true scope of what the Force can achieve. In this version of events, Grievous becomes more than just a returned villain. He's a harbinger of a possible future where the lines between living being, machine, and Force user blur into something entirely new. His resurrection isn't just about adding another threat to the story. It's about expanding the boundaries of what's possible in the Star Wars universe, while staying true to the established rules of both technology and the Force. The threads of destiny sometimes take generations to fully unravel. When Darth Maul sought out Ahsoka Tano during the Clone Wars, offering an alliance to stop Darth Sidious, he spoke a truth she wasn't ready to hear. Years later, watching the galaxy burn under Imperial rule, those words haunted her dreams. But this theory takes that moment of refused alliance and transforms it into something far more significant. A delayed convergence that could reshape the entire sequel era. Time has a way of shifting perspectives. After witnessing the fall of the Republic, the rise of the Empire, and the devastating impact of Sidious's machinations, Ahsoka carries the weight of that refused alliance. Meanwhile, Maul's survival through the ages isn't just about persistence, it's about patience. His understanding of Sidious's true nature, born from bitter experience, has only grown sharper. When their paths cross again, it's not as former enemies, but as two beings who've outlived their original purposes. Ahsoka, no longer bound by Jedi doctrine, has seen enough to know that traditional views of the Force failed to prevent catastrophe. Maul, tempered by decades of survival, has evolved beyond mere revenge into something more calculated, more purposeful. Their alliance emerges from a shared realization. The binary opposition of Jedi and Sith led to cycles of destruction. Both have walked paths between light and dark. Both have seen the failures of absolute ideology. Together, they possess knowledge spanning centuries. Maul's intimate understanding of Sith methodology combined with Ahsoka's deep connection to the living Force, against Kylo Ren's raw power and Sidious's orchestrated return, they forge a different kind of resistance. Maul's combat prowess has grown more refined, less driven by rage, and more by precision. His mastery of the dark side now serves a strategic mind that's learned from every defeat. Ahsoka brings not just her formidable skills, but her ability to connect, to inspire, to build networks across the galaxy. The theory proposes that their partnership fulfills ancient prophecies about the rule of two, but not as the Sith interpreted it. Instead of master and apprentice locked in eventual betrayal, they represent two equal powers working in concert. Their combined strength creates something unprecedented, a perfect fusion of dark side intensity and light side wisdom. Their training methods draw from both traditions. From Maul comes the understanding of passion as a tool rather than a master, the use of emotion without being consumed by it. Ahsoka contributes her knowledge of Force techniques long lost to the Jedi, abilities that transcend simple light and dark categorization. Together, they develop fighting styles that blend Maul's aggressive mastery with Ahsoka's fluid grace. Their influence spreads through the galaxy like wildfire. Those disillusioned with both the First Order and the Resistance find in them a different path. Former Imperial loyalists, ex-rebellion fighters, Force sensitives who never fit the Jedi mold, all are drawn to this new approach to power and purpose. The theory suggests their ultimate confrontation with Kylo and Sidious becomes something more complex than a simple battle. It's a clash of philosophies made manifest through Force and Blade. Maul's intimate knowledge of Sidious's tactics combines with Ahsoka's strategic brilliance to counter plans centuries in the making. Their coordination in combat demonstrates mastery that transcends traditional Force techniques, Maul's double-bladed saber working in perfect harmony with Ahsoka's twin blades, dark and light powers interweaving in ways never seen before. This version of events transforms the sequel trilogy's conflict from a rehash of old rivalries into something revolutionary. The presence of these two warriors who've outlived empires and outlasted dogmas brings depth to the struggle. Their personal histories, Maul's fall and survival, Ahsoka's growth beyond the Jedi way, become testament to the possibility of evolution beyond ancient divisions. The impact of their alliance reaches beyond combat. They begin training others in their balanced approach, creating a new generation of Force users who understand power differently. Their students learn to channel anger without being consumed by it, to feel compassion without being limited by it. This new path draws from millennia of both Jedi and Sith knowledge, but transcends the restrictions of both. The theory explores how this partnership could resolve the sequel trilogy's central conflicts in unexpected ways. Rather than simply defeating Sidious and the First Order through force, they expose the fundamental flaws in both Sith and Jedi philosophies. Their success comes not just from power, but from offering the galaxy a sustainable alternative to endless cycles of light versus dark. As the story unfolds, their influence reverberates through every level of the conflict. The Knights of Ren find their loyalty tested by this new paradigm. First Order officers witness power that doesn't require absolute darkness. Resistance fighters see strength that doesn't demand rigid adherence to light side principles. The entire galaxy begins to understand that balance isn't about choosing sides. It's about transcending them. The destruction of Luke's Jedi Academy stands as one of the sequel trilogy's pivotal tragedies. But there exists another timeline, another possibility, where that fateful night played out differently, where Luke Skywalker's dream didn't end in flames and betrayal, but flourished into something greater than the old Jedi Order ever achieved. In this alternate course of events, Luke sensed the darkness rising in Ben Solo and made a different choice. Instead of that momentary lapse of faith, that split second of fear that drove his nephew away, he approached with understanding. Drawing from his own struggles with the dark side, Luke recognized that suppressing these impulses would only make them stronger. He adapted his teaching methods, creating a new Jedi philosophy that acknowledged the full spectrum of human emotion while maintaining steadfast dedication to the light. The Academy grows into a beacon of hope across the galaxy. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of the old Jedi Order, Luke's school embraces diversity in both teaching methods and student backgrounds. Force-sensitive individuals from all walks of life find their way to his temple. Children, adults, even former Imperial loyalists seeking redemption. Each brings unique perspectives that enrich the collective understanding of the Force. Rey's arrival in this version of events catalyzes an entirely different sequence. Rather than finding a broken, bitter hermit, she discovers a thriving community of Jedi. Luke takes her under his wing personally, recognizing in her raw power an opportunity to perfect his balanced approach to Force training. Her natural abilities flourish under proper guidance, tempered by wisdom rather than trauma. The Knights of Ren never come to be in this timeline. Instead, Ben Solo channels his intensity and passion into becoming the Academy's premier combat instructor. His deep understanding of both light and dark side techniques makes him uniquely qualified to teach others how to resist dark side temptation. The Skywalker legacy continues unbroken, with uncle and nephew working together to forge a new generation of Force users. As the First Order rises, they face an unprecedented challenge. Instead of finding a galaxy devoid of Jedi, they encounter an organized network of Force users trained in Luke's new methods. These Jedi aren't hidden away in temples. They're integrated into communities across the galaxy, serving as guardians, healers, and mediators. The Academy becomes more than a school. It's the heart of a movement that actively works to maintain peace and justice. The theory explores how this thriving Jedi presence would fundamentally alter the power dynamics of the sequel era. Snoke and Sidious's plans must contend with not just isolated Force users, but an entire organization of well-trained Jedi. The First Order faces resistance not just from military forces, but from Force users who can counter their strategies on multiple levels. Luke and Rey emerge as the spiritual leaders of this new Jedi movement, while Ben and his fellow instructors form the tactical backbone. Their combined presence creates a formidable counter to the dark side's rise. Luke's experience and Rey's innate power complement each other perfectly. His wisdom guides her raw strength, while her fresh perspective helps him continue evolving the Order's teachings. The Academy develops new Force techniques that blend ancient Jedi wisdom with innovative applications. Students learn to use the Force in ways the old Order never conceived. Healing techniques become more advanced, battle meditation reaches new levels of effectiveness, and Force bonds between multiple users create unprecedented tactical advantages. When the final confrontation with Sidious comes, it's not a desperate last stand, but a calculated operation. The Academy's Jedi move as one, their years of training under Luke's guidance paying off in perfect coordination. Rey and Luke lead from the front, their fighting styles demonstrating the peak of what's possible when natural talent meets decades of refined teaching. The theory suggests that this version of the Academy would affect more than just the main conflict. Throughout the galaxy, worlds begin to rebuild their own Force traditions under Luke's guidance. The Academy becomes a center for Force learning that encompasses multiple traditions, elements of Guardians of the Wills, the Night Sisters' natural magics, even ancient Sith knowledge studied to better understand and counter dark side techniques. Political dynamics shift as worlds realize the value of having trained Force users integrated into their societies. The Academy's graduates serve not just as warriors, but as diplomats, teachers, and cultural bridges. This creates a network of influence that makes the First Order's military might less effective against unified planetary resistances. Ben Solo's role evolves beyond being just another powerful Force user. As the Academy's combat master, he develops fighting styles that specifically counter dark side techniques. His classes become legendary, producing graduates who can hold their own against dark side users through discipline and technique rather than raw power. This version of events transforms the sequel's narrative from one of rebuilding from ashes to protecting and evolving something precious. The stakes become not just about survival, but about preserving a new way of understanding the Force that could prevent future conflicts. Luke's legacy isn't one of failure and redemption, but of successful evolution beyond the constraints that led to the old Order's downfall. The Academy itself becomes a living testament to balance, not through rigid control or denial of emotions, but through understanding and guidance. Students learn to face their darker impulses with courage and wisdom, turning potential weaknesses into sources of strength. This approach proves more effective at preventing dark side turns than the old Order's methods of suppression and denial. Everyone feared the wrong shadow. While the galaxy trembled at whispers of Snoke and rumors of Palpatine, a different darkness took root in its heart. Darth Maul, the apprentice who refused to die, the warrior who crawled back from madness, had spent decades turning every defeat into a lesson in patience. Now, as the First Order and Resistance clash in the stars above. His web of influence unfolds with the deadly grace of a lightsaber's blade. This isn't the same horn-crowned demon who fell on Naboo. Time has crafted him into something far more lethal. His mechanical legs no longer stomp with rage, but stalk with predatory silence. The double-bladed saber that once whirled with furious abandon now moves like liquid crimson death. Every strike calculated to leave survivors who'll whisper about what they saw, spreading fear with every retelling. The criminal empire of Crimson Dawn was just his first lesson in true power. While other dark side users chase ancient prophecies and superweapons, Maul's influence seeps through the galaxy's underworld like blood through water. Every smuggler's route, every information broker, every corrupt official, they're all threads in his tapestry. Some don't even know they serve him. Those who do would rather die than reveal it. His sanctuary lies in the unknown regions, a temple that bleeds dark side energy into space itself. But this isn't the gaudy theatrical darkness of Exegol or the sterile might of First Order bases. Here, shadows move against their sources. Force-sensitive visitors feel phantom blades at their throats. The walls themselves seem to pulse with decades of accumulated pain, transformed into power by a mind that's intimately familiar with both. Maul's followers aren't bound by fear or fanaticism. They're bound by understanding. Every one of them has felt the bite of betrayal, the sting of a galaxy that rejected them. Former Imperial officers who couldn't stomach the First Order's youth and arrogance. Rebellion veterans disillusioned by the New Republic's corruption. Force sensitives who heard both Jedi and Sith teachings and recognized them as different flavors of the same lie. Under Maul's guidance, their broken edges fit together into something terrifying. His combat style now speaks of terrible wisdom. Gone are the acrobatic flourishes of his youth. Each movement flows into the next like oil, his saber staff leaving crimson echoes in the air that make it impossible to track the true blade. Those few who survive dueling him speak of feeling their own anger and fear turned back against them, their every strike seeming to strengthen him rather than wear him down. The Force bends around him in ways that defy classification. Neither purely Sith nor dark side zealot, he's spent years studying every tradition he could uncover. Ancient Night Sister magics twist together with forbidden Sith alchemy. Stolen Jedi teachings corrupt into their dark mirrors. He doesn't just touch the Force, he reshapes it, leaving wounds in reality that never quite heal. When Rey and Kylo's Force dyad emerges, Maul recognizes it instantly, not as a threat, but as a painful echo of power's ability to bridge broken things. He doesn't seek to destroy their connection. Instead, his agents whisper different truths to each of them, planting seeds of doubt that flower into thorned vines of mistrust. Every time they reach for each other through their bond, his influence stretches with them, a shadow cast by their own light. His revenge against the galaxy unfolds like a venomous flower. The First Order's mighty fleet discovers too late that their fuel suppliers answer to hidden masters. Resistance bases find their secret coordinates leaked by allies who don't realize their minds were turned months ago. Both sides blame each other, never seeing the crimson strings making them dance. This isn't just another bid for galactic domination. Maul's vision reaches deeper, born from a lifetime of watching empires rise and fall. He doesn't want to rule the galaxy. He wants to remake it in the image of his own broken reflection. A place where every certainty breaks, where no loyalty survives unmarred, where the very Force itself learns what it means to be shattered and reforged. Each appearance he makes is precision-crafted theater, a First-Order garrison annihilated, with one survivor left to speak of red blades moving in impossible ways. A Resistance stronghold found empty, its defenders vanished like smoke. A sacred site defiled with symbols that make Force sensitives bleed from the eyes. Every story spreads through the galaxy like a virus, transforming hope into whispered dread. His knowledge of the Force has evolved into something that makes even other dark side users recoil. Having died and returned, having touched the edges of madness and built a palace there, his understanding transcends mere power. He doesn't bend the Force, he breaks it, creating ripples of wrongness that feel like violated natural laws. The dark side doesn't flow through him, it bleeds. The final pieces of his grand design snap into place like the ignition of his legendary saber staff. The First Order, the Resistance, the whispered hopes of Rey, the burning ambitions of Kylo Ren, all of them dance to a tune he's been composing since before they were born. Every victory they achieve, every battle they win, somehow leaves them weaker, more isolated, more vulnerable to the crimson shadow spreading across the stars. And that's where the true terror lies. Because Maul doesn't just want to rule the galaxy, he wants to remake it in the image of his own fractured journey. Every Force-sensitive child who questions their path, every soldier who doubts their cause, every leader who fears their own decisions, they're all taking their first steps into his web. In the end, his greatest weapon isn't his lightsaber or his mastery of the dark side. It's the simple, devastating truth that everyone, deep down, understands what it means to be broken and reforged in darkness. The purple blade ignites with a familiar snap hiss, but the hand that holds it now trembles with something darker than justice. Mace Windu didn't just survive his fall from Palpatine's chambers, he plummeted through years of solitude, his righteous fury crystallizing into something obsidian and absolute. The galaxy had ignored his warnings, dismissed his suspicions, and paid the price in flames. Now, as he watches Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order stumble through the same mistakes, that old fury finds a new purpose. He finds Ben Solo at his weakest moment, when doubt and darkness already cloud the young Padawan's mind. Mace sees in him a reflection of his own past, raw power constrained by teachings that fear it. The boy has heard whispers of the legendary Master Windu, tales of how he channeled aggression into power without falling to darkness. But the Mace who steps from the shadows isn't the stern Jedi Master of old stories. Time and bitterness have carved him into something else. His scarred face tells a story of survival that puts Ben's turmoil to shame. The mechanical hand that replaced the one Skywalker took sparkles with dark energy, each finger carved with ancient Sith runes that pulse in time with his heartbeat. But it's his eyes that truly capture Ben's attention. They burn with the same barely contained power that he feels churning in his own soul. Their training begins not with lightsaber forms or Force techniques, but with truth. Mace shows Ben the full extent of the Jedi's failures, not just Luke's new order, but the arrogance and blindness that led to the Clone Wars. Every lesson is a revelation, each truth more devastating than the last. The young Solo learns how Mace had seen Palpatine's darkness, while others praised his leadership, how the Council's inability to act decisively led to their own destruction. The purple lightsaber that once represented balance between light and dark becomes something more sinister in their hands. Mace teaches Ben that Varpard isn't just a fighting style, it's a philosophy of power, a way to channel darkness without drowning in it. Together, they push the technique beyond its original limits. The seventh form of lightsaber combat evolves into something that makes even hardened warriors step back in horror. Their bond grows stronger with each passing day. Mace sees his own fall from grace, mirrored in his new apprentice's struggles. Ben finds in his fallen master something Luke could never offer, understanding of how righteousness can curdle into revenge, how being right doesn't guarantee victory. They train in forgotten places, ancient temples where the line between light and dark blurred centuries ago. When Ben finally becomes Kylo Ren, it's not with the explosive rage of canon. It's with the cold calculation Mace has instilled in him. Their attack on Luke's temple isn't a tragedy born of impulse, but a surgical strike meant to expose the fundamental weakness of the new Jedi way. Students who survive are given a choice: join their new vision of power or fade into exile like the cowards they follow. The Knights of Ren take shape under their combined guidance. Mace's tactical brilliance melds with Kylo's raw power, creating an order of warriors who fight with controlled fury. Their lightsaber techniques blend Varpard's aggression with elements of ancient Sith forms, creating a style that feeds on the darkness of their opponents. Snoke sees the value in this pair of fallen warriors, but doesn't recognize the threat they pose. While he believes himself to be manipulating Kylo Ren, Mace and his apprentice play a longer game. Every mission that takes them deeper into First Order territory gives them more opportunities to plant seeds of discord, to identify weaknesses in the Supreme Leader's rule. Their sparring sessions become legendary among First Order ranks. Two dark figures moving faster than the eye can follow, purple and red blades weaving patterns that leave burning after images in the air. But it's more than just combat training. Each clash is a lesson in controlled power, in turning emotion into weapon without letting it control you. The galaxy trembles at rumors of their operations. Worlds that resist First Order rule don't just fall, they're systematically dismantled, their defenses picked apart with a precision that speaks of decades of military experience. Mace's strategic genius combines with Kylo's Force abilities to create victories that feel more like elaborate executions than battles. As their influence grows, whispers of their true plan begin to surface. This isn't about serving Snoke or hunting Luke or even ruling the galaxy. It's about reformation, burning away the weakness that allowed Sidious to rise, that let the Empire take hold, that continues to pollute the Force with half measures and compromises. Each world they conquer becomes a testing ground for their philosophy of power. Their legacy spreads through the First Order's ranks like a virus. Young officers study holovids of their missions, trying to grasp the principles behind their perfect coordination. Force-sensitive recruits dream of being chosen for their special training program, even as survivors whisper warnings about its intensity. The purple-tinged darkness they wield feels different from Snoke's corrupting influence, more refined, more purposeful, more seductive. But in quiet moments, when meditation brings no peace and the Force churns with remembered betrayals, master and apprentice understand their true kinship. They are the ones who saw truth too clearly, who tried to warn others of approaching darkness, who were cast aside for daring to name the shadows others refused to see. Their revenge isn't just about power, it's about proving that they were right, that their way was always the only path to true strength. They called themselves Jedi once, back when hope still blazed in their eyes, and Luke Skywalker's promises felt like destiny. Now the Knights of Ren stalk through star systems like living nightmares, their masks hiding faces that once smiled in temple courtyards. But beneath their brutal exterior lies a truth more complex than simple darkness. They are the children of broken faith, students who glimpsed something in the Force that their master was too afraid to acknowledge. It began with whispers between training sessions, subtle discoveries in ancient texts that Luke kept restricted. 7 students, each brilliant in their own way, started meeting in secret beneath twin moons. They shared forbidden knowledge, practiced techniques that stretched beyond traditional Jedi boundaries, not out of malice or hunger for power, but from a genuine belief that the Force held deeper mysteries than Luke dared explore. Each knight carried a unique gift that the rigid Jedi path couldn't contain. Vikrul's ability to sense others' fear bloomed into something that could shatter minds from across battlefields. Apalek's talent for battle meditation twisted into the power to create illusions that drove entire squadrons mad. Cardo's connection to Kyber crystals let him corrupt them into weapons that sang with dark harmony. Trojan's empathy mutated into the ability to feed on others' pain. Ushar's skill at reading Force echoes became a way to poison the very memory of places. Kuruk's gift for healing reversed itself, letting him inflict wounds that no medicine could cure. Their transformation wasn't sudden like Ben Solo's fall. It crept through their souls like frost, each small step away from the light justified by discoveries that seemed to validate their course. They found holocrons that spoke of ancient Force users who transcended the divide between light and dark. They uncovered techniques that the old Jedi Order had sealed away, not because they were evil, but because they were too powerful to control. When Ben Solo discovered their secret gatherings, he didn't expose them. He recognized in their pursuit of knowledge the same burning questions that haunted his meditations. Together, they formed a covenant deeper than mere darkness. Their bond wasn't built on Sith teachings or dark side corruption, but on a shared conviction that the Force itself demanded evolution beyond ancient restrictions. The night they finally turned against Luke's temple wasn't driven by hatred. They saw their actions as mercy, a quick death for a stagnant philosophy. Each knight chose their targets with surgical precision, focusing on those too deeply indoctrinated in the old ways to be saved. Those students who showed potential for understanding were given a choice, offered a place in their new order. Their fighting style evolved into something that made hardened warriors weep. 7 distinct forms of combat, each built around their individual gifts, but flowing together like movements in a terrible symphony. They didn't just win battles, they turned them into dark rituals, each victory adding another layer to their growing legend. The masks they forged became more than simple armor. Each was crafted in secret ceremonies, metal hammered and shaped while they poured their rejected Jedi identities into the molten material. The result was a set of helmets that didn't just hide their faces, they amplified their powers, focusing their abilities through ancient symbols etched in the metal. Their stronghold twisted the very architecture of Luke's teaching into something profane. Training grounds once meant for meditation became chambers where they tested the limits of their evolved powers. The temple's peaceful gardens withered into groves of trees that bled black sap, nourished by the dark energy they channeled. Even the air hummed with forbidden frequencies, carrying echoes of knowledge that the old Jedi had tried to bury. As word of their powers spread, others sought them out. Force sensitives who felt stifled by traditional teachings, warriors seeking strength beyond physical limits. Not all survived the Knight's brutal initiation rites, but those who did emerged transformed. Their growing cult celebrated power in all its forms, embracing both the refined techniques of their Jedi past and the primal energies they'd discovered since. The First Order recognized their value, but never fully understood their nature. Snoke saw them as mere enforcers, dark side adepts to be pointed at enemies like weapons. He didn't grasp that their loyalty to Kylo Ren came not from shared darkness, but from shared origin. They were all children of Luke's failure to embrace the Force's full spectrum. Their missions became dark legends, stories whispered in cantinas across the galaxy, tales of entire resistance cells found frozen in poses of terror, their minds shattered by Vikrul's screaming blade, reports of Aplek turning squadrons against each other with illusions so perfect that soldiers couldn't trust their own eyes, accounts of Cardo turning battlefields into graveyards with weapons that drank life itself. But in rare moments of stillness, when masks are removed and memories surface, something of their former selves flickers in their eyes. Not regret, they're too far gone for that, but understanding of the price they've paid for power. They remember the warmth of Luke's teachings, the simple joy of learning in the temple's halls. Those memories don't weaken them, they sharpen their resolve. Every act of darkness is a testament to how completely they've transcended their old limitations. The Knights of Ren stand as living proof that the path to power isn't always straight descent into evil. Sometimes it winds through places between light and dark, through questions that have no clean answers. They are the shadow cast by Luke's light, the price of denying that the Force contains mysteries deeper than Jedi wisdom can comprehend. A theory emerged from the shadows of Star Wars lore that would fundamentally reshape our understanding of the Force itself. This theory suggests that the true destiny of Rey and Kylo Ren wasn't to fight on opposite sides of an ancient conflict, but to transcend it entirely through the formation of a Grey Jedi Order, with none other than Ahsoka Tano serving as the architect of this revolutionary path. The signs were there all along, hidden in plain sight, like footprints in the sands of Jakku. Throughout the sequel trilogy, we witnessed both Rey and Kylo Ren struggling with the rigid dichotomy of light and dark. Rey's raw power and instinctive draw to the dark side during her training with Luke, Kylo's constant internal battle, torn between the pull to the light and his commitment to the dark. These weren't character flaws, they were breadcrumbs leading to a larger truth. Enter Ahsoka Tano, the former Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, who had walked away from the Jedi Order decades earlier. Her own journey had led her to understand something profound about the Force, that the ancient division between light and dark was more political than practical, more dogma than truth. Through her years of independence, She had discovered ancient texts speaking of Force users who maintained perfect balance, drawing on both aspects of the Force without succumbing to either extreme. The theory suggests that Ahsoka's survival into the sequel era wasn't just convenient storytelling, it was purposeful. She had spent years searching the galaxy's forgotten corners for others who understood this middle path. In ancient ruins on forgotten worlds, she uncovered evidence of Force users who commanded lightning without hatred, who could channel passion without losing control, who found strength in emotion without being consumed by it. What makes this theory particularly compelling is how it recontextualizes key moments from the sequel trilogy. That strange connection between Rey and Kylo Ren. It wasn't just a Force dyad, it was the Force itself trying to show them a new way forward. Their ability to communicate across space and time wasn't just about raw power, it was about balance. Each time they connected, they unconsciously demonstrated the kind of harmony that could exist between light and dark aspects of the Force. The theory presents Ahsoka as the catalyst for this transformation. Having witnessed the fall of both the Jedi and the Sith, she alone had the perspective to see that both orders had failed because of their extremism. The Jedi's suppression of emotion led to their blindness and rigidity. The Sith's embrace of unfettered passion led to their self-destruction. But what if there was another way? According to this theory, Ahsoka would have approached Rey and Kylo separately, using her unique understanding of their shared struggle. To Rey, she would reveal how her natural inclination to help others could be enhanced, not hindered, by embracing her darker impulses. To Kylo, she would demonstrate how his desire for order and purpose could be fulfilled without sacrificing his compassion and connection to others. The formation of this Grey Jedi alliance wouldn't be a simple matter of compromise. It would be a complete reimagining of what it means to be a Force user. The theory suggests that Ahsoka would help them develop entirely new Force techniques that drew on both light and dark aspects simultaneously. Imagine Rey learning to use Force lightning not as a tool of torture, but as a way to jumpstart failing systems or provide emergency power to shield generators. Picture Kylo Ren using his raw emotional strength not to dominate, but to create powerful Force barriers that could protect entire communities. This new path would face resistance from both sides. The remaining Jedi loyalists would see it as a dangerous corruption of their sacred traditions. The First Order's dark side adherents would view it as weakness, a dilution of true power. But the theory suggests that this opposition would only serve to prove the need for change. The galaxy had suffered enough from the endless cycle of Jedi versus Sith. The theory delves deep into how this Grey Jedi alliance would operate in practice. Training would focus on balance rather than suppression or indulgence. Students would learn to acknowledge their emotions while maintaining control, to use their passions constructively rather than destructively. The Force would be understood as a complete whole, with light and dark aspects being seen as complementary rather than contradictory. Perhaps most intriguingly, the theory suggests that this was the true meaning of bringing balance to the Force all along. Not the destruction of the Sith, not the triumph of the Jedi, but the creation of something entirely new. A path that acknowledged and incorporated all aspects of the Force. Ahsoka, having learned from the mistakes of both orders, would guide Rey and Kylo toward this new understanding. The implications of this theory ripple out across the entire Star Wars saga. Suddenly, Anakin's fall and redemption take on new meaning. He wasn't meant to destroy the Sith, but to father a lineage that would eventually help transcend the ancient conflict altogether. Luke's disillusionment with the Jedi way becomes not just personal failure, but unconscious recognition that the old ways were fundamentally flawed. This theory transforms the sequel trilogy from a story about the resurrection of ancient conflicts into one about their final transcendence. Under Ahsoka's guidance, Rey and Kylo Ren wouldn't just find personal balance. They would become the founders of a new tradition, one that could finally bring lasting peace to a galaxy long torn apart by religious warfare disguised as philosophical disagreement. In the vast expanse of Star Wars theories, none captured the imagination quite like the connection between Supreme Leader Snoke and Darth Plagueis the Wise. This theory didn't just suggest a link between these two figures, it proposed that they were one and the same, a revelation that would shake the sequel trilogy to its foundations. Consider the evidence that set fans' minds racing. Darth Plagueis, according to Palpatine's famous Opera House monologue, had mastered abilities that some would consider unnatural, most notably the power to prevent death itself. His supposed murder at the hands of his apprentice, Darth Sidious, was accepted as fact for generations. But what if the master of cheating death had done exactly that? Snoke's appearance alone sparked intense speculation. His tall, gaunt frame bore the marks of catastrophic injury, wounds that would have killed any ordinary being. Yet he survived, wielding force powers that seemed to dwarf those of his apprentice, Kylo Ren. The theory suggests these weren't just random injuries, but the lingering evidence of Palpatine's assassination attempt. The mathematical precision of this theory becomes apparent when examining the timeline. Darth Plagueis was known to be obsessed with midichlorians, conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of life and death. His research into immortality wasn't just academic. According to recovered Sith texts, he had achieved breakthroughs that even his apprentice never fully understood. Supporters of this theory point to Snoke's intimate knowledge of the dark side's history. His understanding of force dynamics went beyond mere scholarship. He spoke of ancient conflicts as if he had witnessed them firsthand. When training Kylo Ren, he displayed an understanding of Sith teachings that seemed impossible for someone who wasn't part of their direct lineage. The physical evidence becomes more compelling under scrutiny. Medical droids analyzing footage of Snoke noted that his injuries appeared to be decades old, consistent with the timeline of Plagueis' supposed death. More intriguingly, his mastery of force techniques matched known accounts of Plagueis' abilities, particularly in the realm of mental manipulation and long-distance influence. But the theory runs deeper than physical similarities. Plagueis was known for his interest in the unknown regions, the mysterious spaces beyond the galaxy's outer rim. According to recovered records from the Empire's archives, he had established secret facilities in these uncharted areas, conducting experiments too dangerous for even the Sith to tolerate. These same regions later became the birthplace of the First Order under Snoke's guidance. The financial connections add another layer of intrigue. Before his apparent death, Plagueis had amassed enormous wealth through the banking clan, establishing shadow accounts and hidden resources that vanished after his supposed demise. The First Order's sudden rise to power required massive funding that seemed to materialize from nowhere unless one knew where to look. Examining Snoke's command center reveals subtle but significant details. The architecture incorporated ancient Sith designs that only a true scholar of their history would recognize. His throne room bore striking similarities to descriptions of Plagueis's private meditation chamber, down to the specific angles used in its construction, angles known to amplify dark side energies. The theory suggests that Plagueis's survival was no accident. After the attempt on his life, he retreated to the unknown regions, using his mastery of midi-chlorians to sustain himself while his former apprentice built and ruled the Empire. This wasn't mere hiding. It was calculated patience, waiting for the perfect moment to re-emerge and reclaim control of the galaxy. Snoke's approach to power differed markedly from typical Sith methodology, showing a patient, almost scientific approach that matched historical accounts of Plagueis's methods. He didn't seek to rule through fear alone, but through careful manipulation of political and economic systems, exactly as Plagueis had done during the Republic's final days. The theory provides an elegant explanation for Snoke's obsession with Kylo Ren. As Plagueis, he would have recognized the potential of Vader's bloodline, seeing in Ben Solo a chance to succeed where he had failed with Palpatine. His method of corrupting Ben showed an intimate understanding of Sith techniques for turning Force users to the dark side, techniques that had been lost for generations. Recovered First Order documents hint at Snoke's unprecedented understanding of cloning technology and genetic manipulation. These weren't just random areas of research. They aligned perfectly with Plagueis's known studies into the nature of life itself. The theory suggests that Snoke's apparently physical form might have been a clone body housing the consciousness of Plagueis. The philosophical parallels are equally striking. Both Plagueis and Snoke demonstrated a unique view of the Force, seeing it not as a mystical energy to be revered, but as a tool to be studied and manipulated. This scientific approach to Force mastery was rare among Force users, representing a distinctive philosophical tradition passed from master to apprentice. Most compelling are the recorded conversations between Snoke and Kylo Ren, where Snoke displayed knowledge of Sith training methods that had died with Plagueis. His teachings incorporated elements of ancient Sith wisdom that hadn't been practiced in millennia, wisdom that only someone who had lived through multiple eras of galactic history could possess. The theory resolves numerous plot threads left dangling in the sequel trilogy. Snoke's mysterious rise to power, his incredible Force abilities, his deep understanding of both Sith and Jedi history, all make perfect sense if he was indeed Plagueis, the immortal Sith master who had transcended death itself. Yet questions remain. If Snoke was Plagueis, why didn't he take revenge on Palpatine directly? The theory suggests a more subtle game at play, one where Plagueis saw the opportunity to rebuild his power base while allowing his former apprentice to fall victim to his own hubris. From this perspective, the entire trilogy becomes a chess game between ancient masters, played across decades of galactic history. This theory transforms our understanding of the sequel trilogy's power dynamics. Every interaction between Snoke and the other characters takes on new meaning when viewed through the lens of Plagueis's ancient wisdom and patience. The First Order becomes not just another Imperial remnant, but the culmination of centuries of Sith planning and manipulation. In the end, whether Snoke truly was Plagueis remains one of Star Wars' most enduring mysteries. But this theory offers a compelling vision of how the past and present of that galaxy, far, far away, might be more closely connected than we ever imagined. Beneath the surface of the sequel trilogy lies a theory that refuses to fade into legend. the existence of Luke Skywalker's secret child. Deep in the shadows of the galaxy's untold stories, fans pieced together clues suggesting that the last Jedi Master had ensured his bloodline would continue, hidden away from both allies and enemies alike. The timeline speaks volumes. During the decades between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, Luke traveled extensively throughout the galaxy, establishing his Jedi Academy and searching for ancient Force knowledge. These years represent a vast unexplored period, filled with potential encounters and relationships that could have led to the birth of a child. Archaeological evidence recovered from Luke's various expedition sites reveals intriguing patterns. Reports speak of a second set of footprints at numerous locations, smaller but moving with similar purpose. More telling are the recovered supplies and provisions consistently packed for two people despite official records showing Luke traveled alone. The Jedi archives, partially restored after the fall of the Empire, contain references to Force-sensitive bloodlines and their tendency to seek each other out through unconscious connection. Luke's journeys often coincided with reports of local Force-sensitive individuals, particularly in the Mid-Rim territories where Imperial presence had been minimal. One name appears repeatedly in these records, a woman known only as the Wayfarer. Surviving students from Luke's academy recall moments when their master would vanish for months at a time, offering vague explanations about personal research. More significantly, they remember his quarters containing children's toys, items he claimed were artifacts, but bore manufacturing dates from the New Republic era. The theory gains substance when examining Luke's recorded teachings. His lectures on Force heredity and genetic predisposition toward Force sensitivity often carried unusual emotional weight. Students noted how he emphasized the importance of protecting Force-sensitive children, with particular attention to keeping their identities secret from potential threats. Financial records from this period show regular resource transfers to remote locations, carefully disguised as research funding. Analysis reveals these transfers often coincided with significant milestones in childhood development, ages when Force abilities typically begin to manifest. The pattern suggests long-term support for a growing child rather than academic research. The theory proposes that Luke's child wasn't just hidden for safety, they were being prepared for a greater purpose. Educational materials found in Luke's personal effects included advanced Force training techniques specifically adapted for young learners, suggesting he was developing a specialized curriculum for a particular student. Witness accounts from various worlds describe encounters with a young person who demonstrated remarkable Force abilities but vanished before authorities could investigate. These sightings cluster around locations where Luke was known to have visited, creating a trail that spans nearly 2 decades. The child's mother remains a subject of intense speculation. Some theorists point to Luke's documented interactions with Mara Jade, a former Emperor's hand turned smuggler. Others suggest connections to surviving Jedi families who had hidden from the Empire. The truth remains elusive, protected by the same careful planning that kept the child's existence secret. More compelling are the unexplained phenomena reported across the galaxy during this period. Incidents of spontaneous Force manipulation, often protecting local populations from natural disasters or Imperial remnant attacks, bear hallmarks of untrained but powerful Force sensitivity. These events map perfectly to the theoretical age progression of Luke's hidden child. The theory suggests that Luke's eventual exile wasn't just about personal failure, it was a calculated move to protect his offspring. By removing himself from the galaxy's stage, he diverted attention away from anyone who might be connected to him. His chosen location on Ahch-To, while seemingly random, offered perfect positioning to monitor certain hyperspace routes without being detected. Analysis of Luke's personal writings reveals coded messages embedded within seemingly mundane observations about the Force. When decrypted using ancient Jedi ciphers, these passages appear to be instructions for a future Force user, possibly his child, on how to navigate the challenges of their heritage without succumbing to the dark side's temptation. The timing of the First Order's rise adds another layer to this theory. Their aggressive recruitment of Force-sensitive children suggests they were searching for someone specific. The urgency of their hunt implies knowledge of a potentially powerful Force user hidden among the galaxy's countless worlds. Training equipment found abandoned on various worlds shows signs of use by two individuals, one adult, one child. The practice drills are distinctive, matching Luke's known teaching style but adapted for a younger student. More importantly, they show a progression of skills that would have produced a formidable Force user by the time of the sequel trilogy. Perhaps most intriguing are the star charts recovered from Luke's X-Wing before its submersion on Ahch-To. When overlaid with known First Order patrol routes, they reveal a complex pattern of safe corridors and hidden hyperspace paths, perfect for moving someone undetected through occupied space. The theory extends beyond mere survival. It suggests that Luke's child wasn't just hidden, but positioned to emerge at a crucial moment in galactic history. The careful preparation, the hidden resources, the secret training, all point to a long-term strategy for preserving and eventually reviving the Skywalker legacy. Local legends from dozens of worlds speak of a young traveler performing acts of kindness through mysterious powers, always moving on before attracting too much attention. These stories share common elements with ancient Jedi parables, suggesting deliberate teaching moments designed to instill specific values. The implications of this theory resonate throughout the sequel trilogy. Every mention of legacy, every question about bloodlines, takes on new meaning when viewed through the lens of a hidden Skywalker heir. The possibility transforms the saga from a story about the end of an era into one about carefully planned renewal. Yet the mystery remains. If Luke did have a child, their identity and location represent one of the most successfully kept secrets in galactic history. The theory suggests they're still out there, waiting for the right moment to emerge and reclaim their heritage, carrying forward the Skywalker legacy in ways we've yet to imagine. Deep in the corners of Mandalorian lore emerged a revolutionary theory that would redefine not just Boba Fett's destiny, but the fate of an entire warrior culture. This theory places the galaxy's most infamous bounty hunter at the center of Mandalore's resurrection, wielding the Darksaber in a campaign that would unite his people against the First Order. The foundations of this speculation trace back to the ancient prophecies of Mandalore, speaking of a warrior who would emerge from the desert sands, marked by survival against impossible odds. Students of Mandalorian history couldn't help but draw parallels to Fett's emergence from the Sarlacc pit, a trial by fire that marked him with both physical and spiritual scars. Recovered Mandalorian texts speak of the Darksaber's true nature, not just as a symbol of leadership, but as a blade that chooses its wielder through combat and worthiness. The theory suggests that Boba Fett's lifetime of combat experience, combined with his complex relationship to Mandalorian heritage, made him the perfect candidate to claim this legendary weapon. The path to the Darksaber would have led Fett through the galaxy's shadows, tracking its last known wielder. Intelligence reports from this period note unusual movement patterns among Mandalorian covert operations, suggesting a series of challenges and trials that tested not just combat prowess, but understanding of Mandalorian ways. The duel itself, according to the theory, would have been more than mere combat. Traditional Mandalorian combat rituals require opponents to prove not just their fighting skill, but their vision for their people's future. Fett's experience as both outsider and heir to Mandalorian tradition would have given him unique insight into how to adapt ancient ways for a new era. Victory in claiming the Darksaber would have marked just the beginning. The theory details how Fett would have used his newfound authority to begin reuniting scattered Mandalorian clans, drawing on both his reputation as a warrior and his understanding of how to operate in a post-Empire galaxy. Archaeological evidence from abandoned Mandalorian strongholds shows signs of recent occupation, suggesting systematic efforts to reclaim and restore these ancient sites. More telling are the modifications made to these facilities, combining traditional Mandalorian architecture with modern defensive capabilities, bearing hallmarks of Fett's tactical expertise. The reformation of Mandalorian culture under Fett's leadership would have differed significantly from previous attempts. Rather than seeking to restore the old ways exactly as they were, the theory suggests he would have advocated for evolution, maintaining core principles while adapting to galactic realities. This approach would have drawn criticism from traditionalists, but attracted younger generations seeking purpose in a changing galaxy. Reports from this period describe increasing numbers of Mandalorian warriors appearing at strategic locations throughout the galaxy, no longer operating solely as mercenaries, but showing signs of coordinated purpose. Their movements suggest preparation for a larger conflict, with training exercises focusing on tactics effective against First-Order military formations. The theory proposes that Fett's decision to ally with the Resistance wasn't just tactical, it represented a fundamental shift in Mandalorian philosophy. By choosing to fight for the galaxy's freedom rather than profit, he would have been returning to the warrior-protector roots of Mandalorian culture before centuries of conflict had turned them toward mercenary ways. Evidence of this shift appears in modified Mandalorian combat doctrine. Traditional one-on-one combat techniques were adapted for coordinated group actions, perfectly suited for guerrilla operations against First-Order occupation forces. These new fighting methods combined ancient Mandalorian principles with Fett's lifetime of combat experience. The mobilization of Mandalorian forces would have required incredible coordination. Supply caches established throughout the galaxy show preparation for sustained resistance operations, with equipment and resources positioned to support mobile warrior groups operating behind enemy lines. Under Fett's leadership, Mandalorian smiths would have begun producing armor and weapons specifically designed to counter First-Order technology. Analysis of recovered equipment shows innovations in Beskar forging techniques, creating armor capable of withstanding even the most advanced Imperial-derived weapons. The theory extends to how Fett would have transformed Mandalorian training methods. Young warriors would learn not just combat skills, but also the importance of honor and protecting others. Lessons Fett himself had learned through his long journey from bounty hunter to leader. Most intriguing are accounts of Mandalorian strike teams appearing to defend vulnerable populations from First-Order aggression, often arriving precisely when needed most. These interventions suggest an intelligence network combining Fett's underworld connections with traditional Mandalorian scouting techniques. The impact on First Order strategy would have been significant. Their tactical documents show increasing concern about Mandalorian interference, with entire operations cancelled or modified due to the threat of armored warrior intervention. The fear of Mandalorian Beskar armor rendering their weapons ineffective would have forced them to divert resources to developing countermeasures. This theory recontextualizes the final stages of the Galactic Civil War. The involvement of unified Mandalorian forces under Fett's command would have added a crucial element to the Resistance's capabilities, providing elite shock troops capable of taking on the First Order's best units in direct combat. The symbolic power of Boba Fett wielding the Darksaber against the First Order cannot be overstated. Here was a warrior who had once served the Empire, now leading his people in the fight for freedom. The image would have inspired not just Mandalorians, but all who fought against oppression. Yet this theory suggests something even more profound. The possibility that Boba Fett's true destiny wasn't just to be a great warrior or bounty hunter, but to become the leader who would guide his adopted culture into a new age. Through him, the way of the Mandalore would be both preserved and transformed, ready to face the challenges of a changing galaxy. The implications ripple outward, touching every aspect of the sequel trilogy's conflict. A restored Mandalorian culture, led by a warrior who understood both the old ways and the need for change, could have shifted the balance of power in ways that would reshape galactic history. Buried in the genetic code of every clone trooper descendant lay a sleeping directive more devastating than Order 66, protocol designated as Order 67. While its predecessor targeted only Jedi, this dormant command carried a more sinister purpose: the systematic elimination of all Force-sensitive beings, regardless of their alignment with light or dark. Security footage from First Order facilities revealed peculiar behavioral patterns among troops with clone lineage. Subtle twitches, microsecond pauses before executing commands, and occasional blank stares suggested latent programming struggling to surface. Military psychologists dismissed these signs as stress reactions, never suspecting they heralded the awakening of a long-dormant protocol. Laboratory analysis of recovered clone genetic samples exposed an ingenious mechanism. Unlike Order 66's straightforward command structure, Order 67 was encoded into the very mitochondrial DNA of clone troopers, ensuring its transmission to future generations. First Order scientists, unaware of its presence, had inadvertently preserved and propagated this genetic time bomb through their own cloning programs. The theory identifies a triggering mechanism linked to Force sensitivity levels in the galaxy. As more Force-sensitive individuals emerged during the sequel trilogy era, the cumulative energy they generated began activating the dormant programming. Each new Force-sensitive child born brought the protocol closer to activation, like grains of sand filling an hourglass. What makes this theory particularly chilling is its explanation for Rey and Kylo Ren's forced cooperation. Their combined strength in the Force would have made them primary targets, compelling them to set aside their ideological differences in the face of an enemy that viewed their very existence as a threat to be eliminated. Military records chronicle unexplained unit movements, squads of clone descended troopers converging on locations where Force-sensitive children had been identified. These deployments occurred without official orders, suggesting autonomous action driven by the awakening protocol. The genetic programming proved remarkably sophisticated. Affected troops retained their tactical training and combat effectiveness while developing an almost supernatural ability to detect Force users. Medical scans showed increased activity in brain regions associated with Force sensitivity detection, as if the protocol had activated dormant capabilities within the clones themselves. Combat footage from early encounters demonstrates the protocol's efficiency. Clone-descended troops executed complex anti-Force user tactics without training, instinctively countering Force abilities that should have been unknown to them. This inherited knowledge base suggests the protocol included comprehensive data on combating Force users of all power levels. The theory proposes that Palpatine himself engineered Order 67 as an ultimate failsafe. If he couldn't control the Force users of the galaxy, no one would. The protocol's activation criteria were calibrated to trigger when Force sensitivity reached levels that might threaten his legacy of control. Rescue operations led by Rey and Kylo faced unprecedented challenges. The affected troops operated with perfect coordination, demonstrating immunity to Force-based mental manipulation. Their shared genetic programming created a hive mind effect, allowing them to adapt instantly to any strategy used against them. Research facilities discovered during these missions revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. The First Order had unknowingly built their army on a foundation of sleeper agents, each carrying genetic programming designed to activate at precisely the right moment. The irony of dark side adherents being targeted by their own troops added another layer of complexity to the unfolding crisis. Communication intercepts show increasing instances of affected troops going dark, breaking from First Order command to pursue their programmed objective. These units operated with ruthless efficiency, pooling resources and coordinating across vast distances without central leadership. The theory extends to explaining mysterious disappearances of Force-sensitive individuals throughout the galaxy. What appeared to be random incidents were actually early manifestations of Order 67, as troops with partially activated programming began acting on their directives in subtle ways. The salvation of Force-sensitive children required unprecedented cooperation between light and dark side users. Rey's compassion and Kylo's understanding of First Order protocols proved complementary, allowing them to establish underground networks for identifying and extracting threatened younglings. Technical analysis of recovered genetic samples suggests the protocol's designers included a cruel twist. The more Force-sensitive individuals eliminated, the stronger the programming became in surviving troops. This escalating response mechanism ensured the protocol would become more efficient over time. Archaeological discoveries indicate similar protocols might have existed in ancient times, suggesting Order 67 was based on forgotten Sith contingency plans. The theory proposes that Palpatine discovered these ancient directives and modernized them using clone technology. The implications for galactic society were staggering. Every clone descendant became a potential threat, forcing communities to confront impossible choices about neighbors and comrades who might turn on Force users at any moment. This social dimension added layers of complexity to an already dire situation. Most fascinating is the theory's suggestion that the protocol's existence forced a fundamental reimagining of Force user society. Traditional divisions between light and dark side practitioners became irrelevant in the face of genetic programming that marked them all for elimination. The hunt for a solution drove unlikely alliances. First Order scientists, horrified by their unwitting role in preserving the protocol, worked alongside resistance geneticists to understand and potentially deactivate the programming. Their research revealed the true sophistication of Palpatine's planning. As the crisis deepened, the theory suggests that Rey and Kylo's mission evolved beyond simple rescue operations. Understanding and neutralizing Order 67 became crucial to ensuring any future for Force users in the galaxy. Their investigation into the protocol's origins uncovered layers of conspiracy reaching back to the Clone Wars era. This theory transforms our understanding of the sequel trilogy's conflict. Beyond the visible struggle between Resistance and First Order lay a more fundamental battle for the survival of Force sensitivity itself. It adds depth to Rey and Kylo's relationship, suggesting their cooperation wasn't just about choice, but necessity in the face of extinction. A theory emerged that redefines our understanding of the sequel trilogy's events, the bleeding of Mortis into our reality. To understand its magnitude, we must first grasp what Mortis truly is. Beyond the edges of known space exists a realm whispered about in ancient Jedi texts and Sith holocrons alike, a dimension where the Force itself takes physical form, potentially the very birthplace of the energy field that binds the galaxy together. For millennia, Mortis maintained its separation from our universe through the powers of three godlike beings: the Father, who maintained cosmic balance, the Daughter, who channeled the light, and the Son, who embodied necessary darkness. But during the sequel trilogy, the barriers between realms began to crack. The first signs appeared subtly. Force-sensitive individuals started experiencing visions more vivid than any normal Force connection. They saw crystalline landscapes where reality bent to will, places where thought and matter were one. These weren't mere dreams, they were glimpses of Mortis bleeding through weakening dimensional walls. Then things got stranger. Force powers stopped behaving as they should. Abilities that once required intense training manifested spontaneously. Meditation sessions triggered reality warping events. Even those without Force sensitivity began feeling unexpected connections to this mysterious energy field. The Force itself was becoming unstable as two realms began to merge. But here's where the theory gets fascinating. The beings of Mortis weren't just watching this happen, they were actively seeking replacements. Think about it. If you were an immortal being responsible for keeping reality stable, wouldn't you want to ensure your legacy continued? The Father, Son, and Daughter began reaching out, searching for successors who could take up their mantles. Their chosen candidates? Rey, Kylo Ren, and a mysteriously resurrected Luke Skywalker, each aligned perfectly with the roles they might inherit. Rey's raw power and instinctive understanding of balance mirrored the Father's position. Kylo's complex relationship with darkness resonated with the Son's domain. And Luke, having transcended death itself, embodied the Daughter's aspects of sacrifice and light. The effects of this convergence became impossible to ignore. Across the galaxy, reality started behaving strangely. Time flowed backwards in isolated pockets. Untrained individuals suddenly wielded Force powers. Spaces appeared where physical laws took suggestions rather than giving orders. It was as if the universe itself was having a crisis of identity. Each potential successor received unique visions of their possible future. Rey saw herself on a throne of pure Force energy, maintaining cosmic balance with a thought. Kylo beheld a version of himself channeling darkness not for destruction, but as a necessary counterweight to light. Luke witnessed a future where his sacrifice would eternally seed hope throughout existence. The choice they faced was monumental. Accepting these roles meant gaining power beyond imagination, but at the cost of their humanity. They would become eternal guardians, watching over the balance of all existence. Refusing might mean the complete collapse of the barrier between realms, merging Mortis with physical space in ways that could unravel reality itself. Scientific instruments across the galaxy recorded unprecedented force disturbances. Energy waves emanated from points where the barriers were thinnest, affecting midi-chlorians in ways that defied all previous understanding. The very building blocks of force sensitivity were being rewritten by this convergence. The original beings of Mortis began appearing in our realm with increasing frequency. Their manifestations left behind zones where physics ceased to function, replaced by pure force will. These areas served as preview windows into what awaited if the barrier between realms fully collapsed. A universe where thought and reality would become indistinguishable. Historical records revealed similar incidents in the distant past, but never on this scale. Previous convergences affected single star systems at most. This event threatened to engulf the entire galaxy, suggesting the boundary between realms had weakened far more than ever before. Chaos mounted as force powers became increasingly unpredictable. Trained force users found their abilities acting independently of their will. The galaxy teetered on the edge of force-driven anarchy as the very rules governing reality began to break down. What makes this theory so compelling is how it recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about the sequel trilogy. Every lightsaber duel took place against the backdrop of unraveling reality. Every force connection between Rey and Kylo wasn't just about their personal story. It was part of a cosmic test to determine their worthiness as potential successors to godhood. The theory suggests that Rey, Kylo, and Luke's combined knowledge might have led to discoveries about Mortis that even its current inhabitants didn't know. Their unique perspectives, spanning light, dark, and the space between, allowed them to see possibilities that had remained hidden for millennia. This wasn't just another conflict about controlling the galaxy. It was about three people facing a choice between godhood and humanity, between preserving the separation of realms and allowing them to merge into something entirely new. Every decision they made carried the weight of all existence. In the end, this theory transforms our understanding of power in the Star Wars universe. When the choice isn't between light and dark, but between remaining human and becoming something greater, what is the right answer? Perhaps the true heroism lies not in accepting phenomenal cosmic power, but in choosing to remain beautifully, imperfectly human in the face of divine temptation. Buried in the depths of an ancient Jedi temple, this theory suggests Ahsoka Tano discovered something that would shatter our understanding of the Force itself. A mistranslation, seemingly minor but profound in its implications, revealed that the Chosen One prophecy wasn't what generations of Jedi had believed. It was never about destroying the Sith. It was about something far more revolutionary, the fusion of light and dark into something entirely new. Ahsoka's discovery began with fragments of text predating the Old Republic. The ancient Jedi language was subtle, with meanings that shifted depending on context. Where generations of scholars had read "bring balance" as "eliminate darkness," The true translation suggested unite the extremes. This wasn't just semantic wordplay, it was a fundamental reimagining of what balance truly meant. The prophecy spoke of 3 waves: the one who would begin the change, Anakin; the one who would understand it, Luke; and finally, the one who would complete it, Rey. Each would come closer to understanding the true nature of the Force, building upon the insights and sacrifices of those who came before. Ancient diagrams found alongside the texts depicted the Force not as opposing sides of light and dark, but as a circular flow, where each aspect strengthened the other. These illustrations bore striking similarities to Rey and Kylo's Force dyad connection, a link unprecedented in its power since the days when the prophecy was first recorded. Ahsoka's research revealed something even more startling. The earliest Force users didn't distinguish between light and dark. They understood the Force as a complete whole, using aspects of both to maintain true balance. The division into light and dark paths came later, a well-intentioned but fundamentally flawed attempt to prevent abuse of certain abilities. The theory suggests that Rey's unprecedented powers weren't random chance, but the culmination of a plan set in motion millennia ago. Her ability to use Force lightning while remaining true to the light, her natural skill with both healing and combat, these weren't contradictions but signs of what true balance could achieve. Kylo Ren's role becomes equally significant through this lens. His struggle between light and dark wasn't weakness but preparation. Each pull toward the light, each embrace of darkness, helped forge him into the perfect counterweight for Rey's journey toward true balance. Temple records spoke of ancient Force users who could channel their anger into healing, use passion to protect rather than destroy, find serenity in action rather than detachment. These weren't failed Jedi or redeemed Sith. They were practitioners of the original unified Force tradition that the prophecy sought to restore. Ahsoka's own experience as someone who left the Jedi Order while remaining true to the light made her uniquely qualified to understand these revelations. She recognized how dogmatic adherence to absolute light or dark had created the very conflicts the Force sought to resolve. The theory suggests that the dyad between Rey and Kylo wasn't just a powerful Force bond, it was the physical manifestation of what the Force had always intended. 2 users, one born to light and drawn to darkness, the other born to darkness and pulled toward light, together forming something greater than either light or dark alone. Evidence mounted in unexpected places. The sacred Jedi texts Rey recovered from Arch 2 contained subtle references to this original interpretation, hidden in metaphors and parables. Luke's disillusionment with the Jedi way wasn't failure. It was an unconscious recognition of these deeper truths. The prophecy's true form revealed 3 markers of its fulfillment: the union of opposing powers, the breaking of ancient cycles, and the emergence of abilities long thought impossible. Rey and Kylo's demonstrations of unprecedented Force powers, their dyad connection, their ability to transfer life force, their shared visions, checked every box. Combat records from their encounters showed something extraordinary. When fighting together rather than against each other, Rey and Kylo's Force signatures merged into patterns matching those depicted in the ancient temple artwork. They weren't just powerful individuals, they were unconsciously rediscovering the unified Force techniques of antiquity. The theory reframes every major event in the sequel trilogy. Rey's natural affinity for both light and dark abilities, Kylo's constant internal struggle, their inexplicable connection, all of it suggested not random chance, but the Force itself pushing toward reunification through its chosen agents. Most compelling were the ancient prophecies' descriptions of the final stage. Two users perfectly balanced between light and dark, wielding powers long forgotten. Not gray Jedi who merely walked the middle path, but true masters of a reunified Force, demonstrating that light and dark were never meant to be separate. This interpretation gives new meaning to Anakin's role as the first chosen one. His fall to darkness and ultimate return to light weren't failure. They were necessary steps in understanding both sides of the Force. His grandson and Rey would complete what he began, not by destroying darkness, but by understanding its true place in the Force's design. The implications reach beyond the sequel trilogy into the fundamental nature of the Force itself. If this theory holds true, every conflict between light and dark was part of a longer journey toward reunification. Every victory of one side over the other was temporary, because the Force itself sought not dominance, but synthesis. The prophecy's true meaning suggests something remarkable. The age of conflict between light and dark was never meant to be permanent. It was a necessary phase of growth and understanding, preparing the galaxy for the emergence of something greater, a unified Force tradition that could finally bring the balance that had been sought for so long. It began with whispers, Force-sensitive individuals across the galaxy reporting something wrong. Not injury or exhaustion, but a creeping numbness to the energy field that had always been as natural as breathing. Within weeks, these whispers became a chorus of terror as Force users began losing their connection entirely, victims of what would come to be known as the Force Plague. The timing wasn't random. The theory suggests Palpatine, ever the master of contingency plans, had engineered a biological weapon more insidious than any Death Star. If he couldn't rule the galaxy forever, he'd ensure no Force user could maintain the power to rule it in his stead. Like a virus lying dormant, it activated only after his final defeat, spreading through the galaxy's Force-sensitive population with terrifying efficiency. The first cases appeared among former First Order sensitives, dark side users who had served Palpatine's final regime. Initial symptoms seemed mundane: difficulty with basic Force techniques, weakened precognition, dulled sensitivity. But within days, victims lost their connection to the Force entirely, as if a fundamental part of their being had been excised with surgical precision. Medical droids across the galaxy reported bizarre findings. Midi-chlorian counts in infected individuals began dropping precipitously, but not through cell death. The microscopic life forms simply stopped responding to their hosts, becoming inert, like switches turned to the off position. Traditional medicine proved useless against what was clearly no natural illness. The plague showed frightening intelligence in its spread. Those stronger in the Force seemed to contract it first, as if the disease actively sought out the most powerful targets. Young Force sensitives, barely aware of their abilities, were often the last to show symptoms. The pattern suggested deliberate design rather than random mutation. Rey and Kylo's investigation led them to ancient Sith laboratories hidden beneath Imperial facilities. There, they discovered research logs detailing Palpatine's work on what he called Protocol Zero, a failsafe designed to sever the connection between midi-chlorians and their hosts. He'd spent decades perfecting it, combining Sith alchemy with advanced biological engineering. The logs revealed something even more chilling. The plague wasn't designed to kill, that would have been too merciful. Instead, it left its victims alive but severed from the Force, forced to live in a universe suddenly devoid of the energy field that had defined their existence. For many, this fate proved worse than death. Each new discovery painted a picture of Palpatine's methodical planning. He had seeded the plague throughout the galaxy using the First Order's resources, hiding dormant spores in everything from medical supplies to food shipments. When triggered, these spores would activate simultaneously, ensuring no corner of the galaxy escaped contamination. The search for a cure forced Rey and Kylo to venture into the darkest corners of Sith space. Ancient worlds like Moraband and Malachor held pieces of the puzzle, their ruins containing fragments of knowledge about familiar plagues engineered during ancient Sith wars. Each site they explored revealed new horrors about how deeply Palpatine had embedded his revenge into the fabric of the galaxy. Their journey uncovered evidence that Palpatine had tested prototype versions of the plague on isolated populations, monitoring the results over generations. Entire communities of Force sensitives had been unknowingly used as test subjects, their gradual loss of abilities documented and analyzed to perfect the final version. The plague's sophistication became apparent in its resistance to Force healing. Traditional techniques proved not just ineffective, but potentially dangerous, as if the disease had been specifically engineered to turn any Force-based cure against the healer. This explained why even the most powerful Force users found themselves helpless against its spread. As they delved deeper into Sith archives, Rey and Kylo discovered references to ancient healing techniques that predated the divide between light and dark. These methods suggested that the cure might lie not in opposing the plague, but in understanding the fundamental nature of the Force connection itself. The theory suggests that Palpatine had overlooked one crucial detail in his planning: the unique nature of Rey and Kylo's dyad. Their connection operated on principles that transcended normal Force bonds, potentially making them immune to the plague's full effects. This immunity didn't protect them entirely, but it gave them precious time to search for answers. Research data recovered from hidden facilities revealed the plague's trigger mechanism, a cascade of Force energy released by Palpatine's final death. He had encoded the activation sequence into the fabric of the disease itself, ensuring it would only begin its work when he was truly gone. It was his ultimate insurance policy. If he couldn't rule forever, he would ensure his end marked the beginning of an age without Force users. The scope of his plan became clear as they uncovered more evidence. The plague wasn't just designed to affect the current generation. It could permanently alter how midi-chlorians interacted with living beings. Future Force-sensitive children would be born unable to access their abilities, creating a galaxy permanently diminished in its connection to the Force. As the plague spread, its effects began changing the very nature of galactic society. Organizations built around Force use started collapsing. Both light and dark side traditions faced extinction not through combat, but through the silent weapon of a dead emperor's final revenge. The galaxy faced a future without Force users, exactly as Palpatine had intended. The theory transforms our understanding of Palpatine's character. His obsession with controlling the Force hadn't just been about personal power. He had sought to understand it deeply enough to fundamentally break the connection between Force sensitives and the energy field they relied upon. It was perhaps the most complete expression of Sith philosophy. If you cannot control something entirely, destroy it so no one else can ever wield it. The race for a cure became about more than saving individual Force users. It became a mission to prevent the permanent alteration of how life itself connected to the Force. Rey and Kylo's journey through ancient Sith worlds wasn't just about finding answers, but about preserving the very possibility of Force sensitivity for future generations.